Uber is quietly reinventing itself again. This time by spending real money on something it once tried to avoid owning at all, the vehicles. Analysts estimate that it has now directed more than $10 billion towards autonomous driving, including over $7.5 billion for future robotaxi fleets and another 2.5 billion as equity stakes in self-driving developers like Lucid and Wayve. This marks a sharp pivot from Uber's original asset-light gig economy playbook towards a world where it wants to be the distribution platform for autonomous driving. Welcome to Business Insights Daily. I'm your host, Shashank. Today, we're getting into a very familiar backseat, but we're going to imagine something very different about the front. Uber, a company that built itself on the idea of not owning cars and not employing drivers, has now committed over $10 billion to autonomous vehicle technologies and fleets. Analysts say this includes more than $7.5 billion towards buying or securing assets, future robotaxi fleets, and around 2.5 billion plus in equity stakes in companies building the tech that makes those cars drive themselves. What happens when a gig economy company starts buying the very assets it once avoided? As you listen, keep this question in the back of your mind. Uber's original genius is being asset light. What does it mean when it starts getting billions into cars and chips? Does that change what kind of company it is? The original pitch was simple and radical. Uber didn't own the cars, didn't employ the drivers. It would be a marketplace, matching riders and drivers, taking a cut and letting the capital costs and day-to-day risk sit with millions of independent contractors. Now, fast forward to today. According to the reporting summarized by TechCrunch and Financial Times, Uber has effectively pointed more than $10 billion towards the autonomous future, roughly over $7 billion earmarked for fleet business and long-term commitments to autonomous vehicles that will run on its network, and over $2.5 billion in equity investments and commercial deals for autonomous tech developers. Companies like Lucid and Wayve doesn't mean Uber is going to own every car the way a traditional taxi company does. Some of those fleets will be owned by partners, investors, or leasing operators. Does mean that Uber is taking on a level of capital commitment and long-term hard dependency very different from its early just an app era. It's an evolution, the U-turn. So here's the second one. As watching a natural evolution growing up and making its own infrastructure, but it's watching a U-turn, the very model that made it famous. Lucid, best known as a luxury EV maker, increasingly vocal about software and autonomous ambitions. Partnering or investing in Lucid gives Uber potential access to high-end, long-range electric platforms that can be outfitted with self-driving stacks. Way, the UK-based autonomous driving startup focused on end-to-end AI models you can learn in many cities without deeply hand-coded rules. Uber Way represents a different path to autonomy, one that leans heavily on machine learning data at scale. These bets come out of Uber's earlier partnership or experiment with other AV companies. Waymo robotaxis in select cities, collaboration with Chinese players like Baidu, and logistics-oriented efforts, the company working on autonomous trucks. Together, you can see the shape of the strategy. Uber did not build all self-driving tech itself, tried that once and pulled back. Instead, it launched a platform where multiple autonomous fleets plug in, make sure those fleets exist, and have some influence over how and where they roll out. There is now putting capital on the table. Why is it 10 billion now? A few forces are converging. The virtual taxi race is real again. Companies like Waymo includes its setbacks have shown that fully driverless rides in certain cities are technical and commercially possible. You can't afford the app you don't use when you want a self-driving ride. Unit economics. In the long run, that is cheap mile, especially in dense cities. Removing cost, human driver, spreading vehicle costs across high utilization and centralized maintenance would improve margins if you can get and platform risk. If autonomous vehicle companies run their own consumer apps and win riders directly, it risks being this in them. One investing in committing fields trying to insert those vehicles grow up on Uber first, not just thinking app. This would fully feature without its own workforce. Since the third, Uber succeeds in shifting more and more rides from human drivers to robot taxis. What does this mean for the millions of people who have treated riding for Uber as either a primary job or safety net? Let's take those three groups I want. Drivers. In short medium term, human drivers will still hand back their vehicles, especially outside a handful of geofenced areas. Long horizon. As autonomy fleets scale particular markets, drivers may see fewer rides in those markets and more pressure on earnings when both taxis can operate reliably. What often frames autonomy is common with late nights, high risk areas as specific routes. Underlying economic incentive is clear. Very good that can be done safely without a human in the front seat. With rules, cost structure changes dramatically. Riders. There's a novelty and convenience, self-driving rides, potentially cheaper prices, less variability, and consistent service. But also, new questions. How are these vehicles routed? Who's responsible in the crash? And what happens if something feels unsafe? There's no driver. In cities, robotaxis would reduce drunk driving and make transportation more accessible in some neighborhoods. It also increase congestion if cheap empty vehicles cruise around repositioning between rides. City regulators will have to decide how to manage curb space, safety standards, and data sharing in a world where a portion of traffic is algorithm driven. The distribution platform vision. Internally, cities start becoming the leading distribution platform on driving. Hear this. On one side, you have multiple AV producers, Lucid, Wave, maybe Waymo, maybe Tesla someday. On the other side, you have millions of riders who just open the Uber app and tap a button. Uber wants to sit in the middle, routing demand for whichever fleet can serve a given trip more efficiency, standardizing payments, ratings, support, and rush, taking a cut of every corner's mile. Well, as it does today with human driving. In that world, Uber doesn't have to win the autonomy technology race itself, it has to win the interface, demand side, and place you go when you want a ride, regardless of who or what is driving. $10 billion in commitments, big purchases, equity stake, price of admission, prove that in future. So let's circle back to three questions we've been threading your story. Number one, what happens if a gig economy company starts buying assets it's once avoided? Uber's autonomy suggests that at least some industries can't stay purely asset light forever. The certain scale, owning and tightly controlling key infrastructure, whereas data center fleets, but strategic necessity. Two, is this evolution or U-turn? It's a growth. Uber is still a marketplace at heart, evolving toward a hybrid model, a platform, not infrastructure investor. It's a very different risk profile than Scrappy. No cars, no drivers, just a but story of a decade ago. And B, Uber building a future without its own workforce? Well, honest answer is potentially. In some places and some groups, robotaxis could eventually take over meaningful share riders in dense, well-mapped cities. The challenge for Uber and for regulators and for society will branching that transition in a way that doesn't leave millions of drivers without a viable path forward. For the next time you tap an Uber app and see a familiar car with a human behind the wheel, you might think about the other version of that same thing. A few years down the line, an autonomous vehicle humming up their curb, at a fleet that costs billions to deploy, platform, a picture on who, what sits in that front seat. Thank you for listening to this Insights Daily. May it shine, and we'll see you tomorrow.